Happy Wednesday, everyone. This is Eric Guy at Center for Victory. On today's webinar, we're going to be talking about inspiring others to do great work. A lot of great material here. Probably could have broke this up in 2 or 3 sections. Maybe we'll come back to it after this, depending on it, but we're going to dive down into it. We're going to get started. We're going to start off by talking about this concept that we've been talking about for a while now, is just talent optimization. Talking about inspiring people. Most of us have a business strategy. Most of us on the other side of that bookend know what kind of results we want. What we're trying to look for, especially when using data and analytics, is really how do I get that person? How do I get them in? But once I get them in, how do I keep them motivated? How do I keep them productive and things like that? And there's lots of different ways to do that. Some are better than others, obviously. But the thing we're talking about here is engagement, and sometimes we get too far off course, and then it becomes, hey, look, let's have this wide open area where we, ride around tricycles and skateboards and things like that. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but I think we're overshooting some of the things that really are the essence of inspiring people to do great work. And that's is how do we engage them? I mean, it's not just fun. A lot of the things that we hear that I help other folks with, that we help other folks with here, are really inspiring people. Here's just a real short list. We're not going to hit all of these today. Really knocked it down just to 4 things. But continuation of people's development, that's a huge thing. That's one of the things that you can do with a lot of the assessments that we utilize, especially for those of you that are on board right now that are using the predictive index in the software. An environment where they can be themselves, culture of transparency and feedback, knowing the individual, appreciating good work. With appreciating that good work, you can see on the other side, giving more attention to great people. A lot of times we spend most of our time with the people that are dragging us down, and what we really need to do is spend probably less time with them, get them out quicker, and give more attention to the people that actually want to be there. Get up and get out. That means get out of the office, blow off steam on site. Some of us, we just get too kind of formal, and we need to just get up and have some fun every once in a while. Encouraging creative time, clarity breaks, get everyone behind the mission and keep them there. All good things. We're going to talk about 4 critical pieces today, and hopefully this will be helpful, something you can use as soon as this webinar is over. Just to keep in mind, these webinars are recorded. They're recorded on our YouTube channel. You can always go back and you can share them with anybody. They don't necessarily have to be trained in PI for you to share that link with them. But you can go back and refer to them at any time. If you want to also, for some of you that are clients of ours, these are types of things that we can workshop with you as part of your tune-up, as part of your PI contract. I mentioned engagement earlier. It's not just fun. It's about the emotional commitment to the company and its goals. When we look at the discretionary effort, the forces of engagement that really pull people down, and these are the 4 that we'll be talking about today. When we talk about inspiring people, we don't want them just to come into work just because they have to. We want them to come into work because they want to and want to do that work. Every day is not going to be perfect. What contributes to that, the 4 main factors that contribute to that we're going to be talking about today, are job fit, the manager of that person, the culture, and the team that person works in. So pay attention to those. We're going to give you examples of each one. And then, as always, we'll stop at the end and answer any questions that you all might have. Again, the environment pressures that we're going to go down today: job fit, manager impact, team dynamics, and culture. If you're trying to get any kind of best practice inside your work environment, these are the 4 main things that you want to pay attention to. The other things that we mentioned earlier are good. Some of them fall in line with this, but these are the things that you want to make sure you get done well. The first one, job fit. So the disengagement forces that happen with that person that don't get them inspired, or a misalignment between their natural tendencies and their key responsibilities for the job. Those of you using the predictive index software, what we're trying to do is line up that person, their PI, their natural behavioral tendencies, to the natural behavioral tendencies of that job. Instead of being subjective, we're not guessing, we're putting the right people in the right role. For this example, for today, we have an inside sales hunter, right? So the job, this is the job behavior, quick to connect, natural juggler, so low C, very high goal orientation, very risk tolerant. For those of you that know PI, that would be that higher A, lower D. And self-driven, very proactive, high A, low C. That is the job. If we look at the job and we look at somebody like Heather, all right, she's in that position, but she likes perfection. She likes tasks over people, and she's a little bit slower to connect. Can you already see how that might not be a great fit? Here's her PI, so her B's off, her C's off, her D's off as well. Really not a good fit, and it's not about whether she can do it. And keep that in mind. It's about, will she do it, and will she do it well for long periods of time? Heather's a really nice person, but if we put her in the wrong role, she's not going to stay engaged and inspired very long. The Heather versus the job, you can see where the gaps are. Now, if I'm trying to inspire somebody to be more social and quick to connect and a big risk taker, I'm not sure, even if all the coaching that I do, that I want to take that on. And think about it, you might have more than just one Heather. Again, it's not that Heather can't do it. What we're trying to do is, will she do it? Will she do it well for long periods of time? She might be better served in a different position inside of the company. That's one of the ways to really try to inspire people, is to really get them into the right role, help them understand by the use of the job assessment what that role and what those expectations are. Now, if you have somebody that you don't want to let go of, that you can't move around, then you have to work with Heather. And how to inspire her is that, you're going to have to do a lot of coaching with her, especially around that C drive and that B drive. And maybe help her out, pair her with somebody who can do that a little bit easier. Speaking of pairing up, now we get to the manager impact. And I can't tell you how many of these calls we get every day. I just did a relationship guide for a manager and his direct report this morning. And wow, you can tell where they're having issues. I don't even have to know them to just look at their PI and say, the manager's probably doing this, this, and this, and not providing this, this, and this for that employee. So when there's a misalignment between the manager and the self, that, you get demotivated, you start to become disengaged. What we really want to look forward to is, how do we keep those people and give them what they need? Because that leads to that inspiration, that leads to that engagement of that person. For example, we have Mr. Allen here. He's the head of sales. So he needs feedback, needs an opportunity to influence, and he needs that people connection. We have Mark, who's the new CEO, who's going to be Allen's boss. He's very direct. He's data oriented. He's operationally focused. For those of you that utilize the PI, you could probably think about their patterns, and I'll show you in a little bit here. But this is, if there's no self-awareness around this could be a recipe for disaster. If there is self-awareness around it, it could be a really good team. As you can see, Alan's pattern, very collaborative, probably a pretty nice guy, really needs that face-to-face, right? He's got a smile on his face. Mark is, his picture's more of his pattern. And again, both nice people, probably meaning to do well in their positions. But Mark's like, I would just wish Alan would stop talking, asking me questions. He can't do his job, so one thing leads to another. as the boss, remember, people don't quit their job. They don't stop getting inspired in their job because of that. It's typically their manager. People don't quit their job, they quit their boss. Mark's going to have to do some adaptation to really give Alan some of the things that he's needing. He needs more of a collaborative environment, needs that face time, right? The ability to just spitball some ideas. And then the understanding that what Mark needs is just time to think. It's not that Mark doesn't like Alan. It's just Mark a little bit more formal, a little bit more task oriented and tactical in technical in nature. Remember, the employee's needs always come first. There's lots of different ways inside of our systems and inside of our assessments to do that, but it's really important for that manager to understand the needs of their employees. And it's not easy. You have to practice it. You really have to practice with that. Some of the ways that you can go about that are the relationship guide. This is found under the people section in the predictive index software. This is great. This is great to do with all those 90-day tune-ups that you're going to be doing with your people if you're the manager. It talks about relationship strengths, relationship cautions, and then tips. For those of you out there that already have really good relationships, especially with somebody that's different from you, that's a direct report, I would still suggest utilizing this, because it might filter out something that you do well that you can do even better. And for those of you that struggle with certain people, this is going to really bring to light objectively what those issues are. Another way we can reinforce that is through the management scorecard. Again, this is in the PI software. What it's doing is it's taking that person's PI and developing these statements, and really is a scorecard for that manager and that direct report to look at and say, hey, what does this person need in their situation? How do I engage them? How do I inspire them more in this role so they stay, so they're engaged, they're productive, they're efficient, and they just love to come to work? I would suggest doing this, and we recommend every 90 days as best practice. We do have some folks that are utilizing this every 90 days. And we have a few newer clients that are just starting to roll this out and pretty excited about it. But it does come with a little guide here. We have more questions if you're interested, but this is just a really nice starting point. What have you done well? What have we done well? What can we do better? And you'll notice in step 2, there's an action plan there. So this becomes more leadership than management. You're not managing this person. You're really leading them and inspiring them to be the best that they can be, and really learning about who they are, what their drives are. I like the step 3, the blockers. It might not always be behavioral drives and needs, but the good question there is, what might prevent me from carrying out my action plan? And that's when the discussion could be, hey, look, I need some help from you, my manager, my boss, or we can do this, we can do that. Something, is there anything blocking that may inhibit me from continuing to grow and develop? Right. And this, I see a lot of employees really leave after doing this, feeling more engaged, more inspired to go and do great things inside their company. The third piece to inspiring employees to do great work is really looking at the team dynamics. And, it's not a lot of fun when everybody isn't like you. It's great to have a team where you're kind of all the same and we all see things differently, not always valuable in the things that we do, but understanding that disengagement or lack of inspiration comes when I don't feel like I'm part of the team. And a case in point, I have a client, they've probably been with us probably a year and a half now. When we first rolled out their training, all of their managers came in. I noticed that all of their managers were exactly the same except one. And I probed a little bit and found out that this particular manager was the hiring the one that was different was the highest producing manager out of the whole group. And as we went through the training, she started to say, you know what, I've really started to think about a change of career now. And we got together with the CEO, and I'm like, okay, well, what's going on? And what she said is, I don't feel like I'm part of the group. Right? The rest of the group was really high B. She's a low B. However, she's the best producing manager by far on that team. And so we talked about things and used some of these analytics that we can use in the predictive index software to help her understand that, hey, look, you don't have to be like everybody else. Results are results. And help the rest of the team understand that, hey, look, just because she's not the same doesn't mean that she doesn't bring value to the team, and just making them aware of, her behavioral attributes as well. You can see here, there's the team fit there, which would be what's in the blue. So A, B, C, and D. So it's a very, very much, a collaborative environment, lots of talking, lots of quick to connect, lots of informality. And then along comes somebody that's a little bit more aggressive, needs time to think before they speak, and more data driven. Now, again, if you don't use the analytics, that person might get weeded out. In this particular situation, that's what we want. That person becomes the most important member of that team, because they're able to challenge the status quo. They're able to go back and think things through. They're able to bring some structure and order, but they're going to tell you how it is. Right? So again, this is when we look at the team. Just because they're different doesn't mean they're not valuable. In this particular situation, in the example that I gave you earlier about the lady and the rest of her managers, they need that person, just the way this team needs this person as well. Another way that you can bring light to that is using the analytics inside the team work styles in your predictive index software. We'd be happy, any of us consultants would be happy to help you facilitate a discussion with this. You can do it on your own. We would suggest, before you try to facilitate it on your own, that you contact us and maybe walk through some things, some bullet points on what you're going to say, how you're going to present it to everybody. And you can see in this particular example, we have everybody that's kind of in the middle there, and then we have a person that's extremely telling. Again, this is very indicative of some situations where there's an outlier, but really seeing, okay, that person's an outlier, but really we need them on our team. They bring great value, and here's how they bring great value. How can we work better together and more and create more synergy inside of our environment? And the last is culture. When we look at culture, to keep people inspired and feeling part of, this is the bigger than team even. So feeling like what the culture expects of you isn't who you really are, leads to disengagement, leads to uninspired employees. How do we inspire them? Understand them. This goes back to that first piece I was talking about earlier. How do we understand the environment and the culture that we're putting people in? So when we look at something like our PI management team, management's very informal, more collaborative, quick to connect, talkative, not so big on structure as an average. Now, somebody that's a lot different than that, which are developers, go, wow, don't fit in. However, we really need those folks, with all the improvements for the PI software and this and that. We definitely need people doing that. So how do you manage those two teams and create a culture where everybody can really fit in, right? But understand through analytics that, hey, our development team, that culture is a little bit more rules-based, a little bit more patient, structured, heads down. Management team needs to understand that, hey, look, I can't go and be myself there. this is what these people need in the development team, and vice versa. When we look at these analytics, we have to really look at what are the differences that are going to create synergy instead of creating discontentment for those people that we really need. If I'm on the management team, I really need my development team, but how can I create a culture where they feel welcome, where they feel appreciated, where they feel like they're part of, and they can be who they are. Vice versa, if I'm the development team, how can I create a situation that that really brings in people from the management team that are they're a little bit more verbal, less formal, don't roll your eyes maybe when I just say something off the cuff. Those kinds of things go a long way in really inspiring people, and inspiring people to do great work when they feel like they can be at home with who they are and have other people there that respect those things. Okay, just some upcoming events we want to make you aware of coming up. We have another webinar coming up March 11th with our wonderful Lisa Sable. She's going to be talking about how to supercharge your sales. Lots of engagements. I'll be speaking at Man Up Retreat 6th and 7th here in Pittsburgh, and a Re-Engage, which is a great opportunity to get involved with our veterans here in the wonderful city of Pittsburgh. The L3 conference is coming up, Great Leadership Conference in Pittsburgh. And then we have some private trainings, managing people to perform. Another webinar with our own Christy Colley on midlife career changes. That should be really good as well. And then the PI Jedi training, the 2-day certification, again, is April 21st and 22nd. Make sure you get signed up for that. I know we had a group of 15 the past 2 days go through that. With that, I will leave it over to questions. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask or answer? I have a couple questions in front of me that came in. One of the questions was, Eric, can you go over again how to get to the relationship guide? And is that in our PI software? Yes, that is in your predictive index software. That should be under the people tab. Click relationship guide. Once you click that relationship guide, you can just fill in the 2 names. There is a little button once you get in that software. There's a little button where you can put on for PI experts. That will print out, or not print out, but that will show the PIs of each person as well. And then with that, the scorecard also is in the PI software. You can get that even with the basic PI software subscription. Can you suggest best practices for our company? Yes. When I showed the first slide and said, these are some things that we hear on how to really provide an environment for inspiring employees. Those are all great ideas. I would suggest that you start with what we just went over, those 4 points. The job, making sure the person's in the right job, making sure the manager understands there's good relationships between the manager and the employee, the team dynamics, and then ultimately the culture. If I were to start, just to make sure, especially if you're just starting with our system, make sure you have those job assessments completed and you start matching people up and can give them objective feedback about the position that they're in and what the expectations of those roles are. Okay, another question. Good question. I have a question in relation to PI. We have what I consider an issue where applicants apply, say 5 years ago, and then reapply in 2020, and we use the same PI as back in 2015. Haven't they changed? Recommendation is always to use the first one for that self concept. The first time you took it is usually the most accurate on how the test or how the assessment and the survey is administered. So I would keep with the first one if you have that on file. You can, if you re-administer it, you can use that self-concept as well if you want to, but I would always, and this is what I do, I always go back and refer back to the first one that they took, especially if they've had any kind of training in the PI. Thank you for that question. Anybody else? All right, well, mark it in your calendars. I think you received an email about the March 11th webinar. Hopefully we'll see you all back from that. If you have questions after this webinar, please, you can shoot me an email, just eric@centerforvictory.com. We'd always love to hear your feedback. With that, have a great rest of the week. This should be up. You should be getting an email with this link into it by the end of the day or sometime tomorrow. But have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you around.